Thanks very much. Let's bring in GOP Senator Marco Rubio, member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator Rubio, thank you for joining us this morning. George. Right after the attack last night, you put out a tweet. You said, "Be sure of this, the wicked will not go unpunished," Proverbs 11:21. But are you confident that this strike was enough to prevent future attacks?
I actually put out that tweet before anything was publicly announced, and number two, and the reason why is a broader thought, and that is that Bashar al-Assad and his patron in Moscow are war criminals. Now, I believe it degrades his ability. That is an important airfield, has strong strategic value. The aircraft that were destroyed in this attack, some of them were probably the ones used in that assault. And so I do think it achieves an important strategic measure. It will not degrade his entire capability to do some of this, especially as the Russians continue to support him. But he is certainly not just less capable, but I believe less willing this morning to do that sort of activity because his cost-benefit analysis just changed dramatically.
So the big question right now, of course, is what comes next. We just heard Jon Karl report from the White House that escalation, according to his sources, is not in the cards right now.
Well, look, first of all, I do believe that there was already ongoing work at the National Security Council and in other parts of the administration to come up with an overall strategy on Syria. As is the case with presidencies, you know well, you worked in the West Wing. When it comes to foreign policy, you don't sometimes get to pick the timing. I think events got ahead of the planning here. That said, the reality of it is we are going to have a strong long-term strategic plan for Syria, and some of that will be open, some of that will not. But ultimately, it has to be, in my opinion, about the removal of Assad and about the defeat of ISIS and al-Qaeda elements. Here's the point, as long as Assad is there, you're going to have a radical Sunni group, whether it's al-Qaeda or ISIS or somebody else. And so as long as Assad is there, you are going to have terror from Syria. And that's why he needs to go, in addition to the defeat of those terror groups.
The president, as recently as Tuesday, before this strike hit, had said it accepted the reality of Assad in power. His Secretary of State made that point. His press secretary made that point. You had even argued earlier this week that might have sent a signal to Assad that he was free, that he could launch a kind of strike like that with impunity.
Well, I think if you're Assad and you see those statements, you probably feel like you have license to do a lot of things. And I think that calculus has now changed. And it's one of the things that was achieved last night. That doesn't mean he won't do it again. It just means he's going to think a lot more about it. And so will Vladimir Putin. That said, I do believe that the administration is shifting in a different direction, and rightfully so. And I'm glad to see it. I'd rather them make the right decision and not worry about, the sort of questions that are now being asked about.
So you believe President Trump is now open to regime change?
I think President Trump, he'll have to speak for himself, and the administration will have to speak for themselves. But I think they understand more fully today than perhaps they did a week ago that as long as Bashar al-Assad is in power, you will not be able to achieve the objective of defeating radical terrorism and radical Islam in Syria.
You've already heard from some of your colleagues in the Congress that they believe that the president wasn't authorized to launch these military strikes. If the president does go in the direction you're suggesting, moving towards regime change in Syria, should he come to Congress first?
First, the president was authorized to conduct this strike. He's not asking for a declaration of war. He's not committing ground troops over an extended period of time. He was dealing with exigent circumstances. And as the commander-in-chief, not only does he have the right, he has an obligation to act. Obviously, if this is going to be a broader, long-term conflict, it is important that he comes to Congress because we need to pay for it. It needs to be funded on top of everything else. And I believe that's exactly what they will do.
Senator Marco Rubio, thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right.